and welcome to the Gerrim Onside podcast, episode 5. After a week's break last week due to technical difficulties, we're back. Um, welcome back to the podcast with me, your host Nathan Major, joined as always by Ian Judson. How are you doing this week, Ian?
I'm very well. I'm very excited. It's a very exciting week for me personally this week. So yeah, I'm in a good place at the moment. Yes.
Good. Not a good
Uh, uh,
weekend for the whole teams this past weekend, though, was it? For either of our team.
uh, no, it wasn't. As I was saying before we started recording, Rovers really shocked me on Thursday night because I didn't see that coming,
Mm.
and I I just I've done a video this morning for an alert service. I'm wondering if we've just reached a seminal moment in the season, for various different reasons, for
Mm.
different things that went on. Obviously, Rovers, and then, of course, Wigan doing what they did to Wakefield Trinity, etc. Um, Huddersfield beating Warrington, and I just thought it just felt like quite, I hesitate to call it definitive, but I think there are clear ramifications for all of the teams there, either in the positive or the negative. And um, and I just wonder if we've reached that moment in the season where realization hits home, possibly. I don't know.
Mm.
Um, you know, but we'll see how it goes, and just see what's what, and how exciting is it though? How great is
Yeah.
it to be excited like this? To not be sure what we're going to get this week
No.
again. You know, at this stage of the season.
So I'll start off as I always do with our results roundup. So starting off with the
Yeah.
Betfred Men's Super League. Started off with Leeds Rhinos 28, Hull KR 6 in that result that shocked both of us. Lee Leopards 38, Salford Red Devils 6. St Helens 16, Hull FC 10. Catalan Dragons 38, Castleford Tigers 4. Huddersfield Giants 23, Warrington Wolves 10, maybe the upset of the round there. And Wigan Warriors 44, Wakefield Trinity 2. Down under in the NRL, South Sydney Rabbitohs 40, St George Illawarra 0. Penrith Panthers 16, Canberra Raiders 20. That was in Golden Point. That takes Canberra to the top of the table. Melbourne Storm 20, Canterbury Bulldogs 14. Manly Sea Eagles 58, Dolphins 30. That sounds like a hell of a game. Gold Coast Titans 18, New Zealand Warriors 32. Parramatta Eels 30, Sydney Roosters 10. Newcastle Knights 12, Brisbane Broncos 46, and West Tigers 28, North Queensland Cowboys 34. The Women's NRL Premiership, Canterbury Bulldogs 24, Canberra Raiders 56, Gold Coast Titans 22, St George Illawarra Dragons 4, Parramatta Eels 12, Sydney Roosters 56, Newcastle Knights 16, Brisbane Broncos 46, New Zealand Warriors 14, Cronulla Sharks 22, West Tigers 8, North Queensland Cowboys 30. In the Women's Super League, back up in the UK, St Helens 90, Barrow Raiders 0, York Valkyrie 32, Wigan Warriors 10, Leeds Leopards 10, Leeds Rhinos 40, Huddersfield Giants 54, Warrington Wolves 4. In the Men's Championship, Toulouse 8, York Knights 16, York solidifying the top spot in the championship there. Sheffield Eagles 6, Bradford Bulls 70, Featherstone Rovers 14, Widnes Vikings 30, Doncaster 22, Barrow Raiders 32, Hunslet 6, Batley Bulldogs 40, London Broncos 18, Oldham RLFC 20. And finally in League One, Midlands Hurricanes 22, Keighley Cougars 24, Swinton Lions 18, Rochdale Hornets 12, North Wales Crusaders 31, Gull Vikings 6, and Newcastle Thunder and Whitehaven RLFC. I didn't have a result at point of time, so I will we will talk about the game of the round while I have a look and see what the Newcastle Whitehaven score was because it was a late finish. So, what was your game of the weekend, Ian?
Game of the weekend. Um, I'm not really sure. I suppose St Helens and Hull. Our trip to St Helens was. I was impressed with Hull. I'll say that in defeat because we had 5 changes to the team from the team that beat Lee. Uh, to have that many changes against a very, very informed St Helens and to push them as far as we did, and for goal kicking to be the only difference um, in a situation like that, I think that was quite impressive from Hull. Um, you know, after 10 minutes, you were thinking, "Oh, flipping heck, this could be a cricket score here."
Mm,
The way that St Helens started, and Hull, you could see were really trying to sort out some combinations on the move, as it were. And obviously we'd lost Price and Asiata again, and we'd made some changes, and square pegs in round holes again. Jordan Rapiner in the
mm,
halves, etc. And losing Jed Cartwright after 2 minutes to I think it's a torn pectoral.
mm,
Um, that obviously had a big knock-on effect for us. So to push St Helens as close as we did, given the circumstances, I think Hull deserve more credit than they maybe would get normally for a defeat
mm.
like that. But um, I would say probably that was my game of the weekend. Just for Hull to push St Helens that close.
Mm.
Um, and I left there thinking, do you know what? I've seen enough there to tell me that Hull can knock off the necessary wins to stay in sixth place and be in the
Mm.
playoffs and to be going back there in the playoffs. And I'll bet if that is the case, St Helens are not going to be absolutely cocksure of themselves if that happens, because I think Hull really, really pushed them and
Mm.
given a more settled team. From I would say Hull could have got over the top of them, but it just wasn't to be because of such disruption leading up to it and at the start of it. So yeah, that was probably my game on the weekend. I would say.
I think the good thing you can say about this season is, concerning the top six, is that any combination of those top six, anyone on their day could beat the other one. So, as you say, Hull could quite
Yeah,
easily go to St Helens and turn them over in the playoffs. We've seen that Leeds, Lee, and Wigan can all beat Rovers. They're the only 3 teams to have beaten us this
and
season.
of course you've gone on record as saying that you wouldn't want to play us in a playoff
No,
semi
no,
final.
no, definitely not. I wouldn't want to play Hull in the playoffs, full stop, to be honest. I don't think my blood pressure could take it. Um, I'm not
Yeah,
I'm not particularly cut out for knockout rugby to begin with when I'm watching it live. But if it was Rovers
fair enough.
versus Hull, I think that'd be even worse for me, for my
How
heart.
does Jackson handle knockout rugby league? Is he all right with it?
He only went to the Challenge Cup game against Oldham, so he hasn't really had much
Uh,
experience of it. Because I didn't take him to York and I didn't take him to Wembley for reasons of crowding and putting him on a coach and train. Well, not the train, but the coach specifically.
right.
So he,
Yeah.
he's all right as long as there's not too many fireworks generally.
Fair enough. That's
Mm.
okay then. As long
How
as Jackson can handle it, everything is all right with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to finish off the results, Newcastle Thunder 10, Whitehaven 28. So there we go. Whitehaven getting the
Uh,
better of
there we
Newcastle
go.
there.
So
Um, my,
what was your game of the weekend then?
um, I think special mention to Hull and Saints because that was a good game. Um, I think we saw the re-emergence of a dangerous Wigan side on Sunday. I thought their performance was it's amazing what bringing Bevan French back into the side does to that Wigan team because
We are in complete agreement about that.
he
Yes.
he was the pivot around which everything rotated because it seemed like in the first 10, 15 minutes it
Yeah.
was a game that could have gone either way, and then Bevan
But I mean,
French took the
I
game
was
by the scruff of
watching
the
it,
neck.
and I thought, with Bevan French starting, I thought, not going to expect much from him because he's
Yeah,
been
me
out
too.
for, what was it, 6 weeks? He was out.
Yeah,
He's not match fit. And yet, he created, out of the first three tries, he scored one, he created one, and he had a very significant hand in the other. And I just
yeah,
thought, yeah, Bevan's back, and he's Bevan. It's Bevan French doing Bevan French things,
mm,
which a lot of teams struggle against. Although, for some reason, some teams didn't struggle against him in the Challenge Cup this year, but that's another story, isn't it? But um, he obviously made a massive difference. And that's the sort of player he is. He's box office. It's as simple as
mm,
that. Maybe not quite as box office as Lewis Martin, but he is very good, and he has. I think it made such a big difference for Wigan as well because, of course, he's a spine player, and
mm.
he is. He's a mercurial talent. We know that, but put him in the spine, either in the halves or at fullback, and he's not just going to do a job for you. He's going to excel for you, isn't he?
Yeah.
Um,
He's one of those halfbacks who never really seems like he needs to try at playing rugby. He just makes things happen, and
yeah.
it just looks like it comes so naturally to him.
Well, yeah, it does, and that obviously having a linchpin like that makes a big difference.
Mm,
So I mean, you look at Rovers when they're without Mikey Lewis,
mm.
against Leeds and Lee earlier this season, they looked absolutely lost without him, didn't they?
Yeah. Although
So
to be fair, I don't think Mikey had a particularly good game against Leeds this past week.
well,
But
no, he didn't, and
no,
but, I mean that surprised me. But I mean, I thought Leeds hyped up that game really well because they had a picture of Mikey with a picture of Jake Connor,
yeah,
two form players, and they sold it really well. And I thought that was expert marketing from Leeds.
yeah,
And it didn't take long for it to emerge. When Jake Connor scored that first try, I thought, here we go, this is going to be the Jake Connor show. And,
mm,
I understand why the unpropped forward got man of the match for Leeds, but also wouldn't have argued if Jake Connor had got it or if Lockie Miller had got it.
yeah.
I think it was just that sort of a game, if you like. But
That young lad Presley Cassell's going to be some talent in the future, isn't he? If he keeps progressing the way that he is.
he is, yeah, yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Leeds, St Helens, Wigan, we all know that they're synonymous with producing outstanding young talent, and so that's you just come to expect it, don't you? And
Yeah,
that's what obviously makes a massive difference, doesn't it?
yeah. They're a
Um,
production line, aren't they? Basically.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, they absolutely are. And how many of them will play for England in the Ashes or play for England in the World Cup next year? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It'd be frightening figures, won't it, of them? But there we go. It's just we just expect it, I think, now.
yeah. So we're into the final stretch of the season. I think it's fair to say now there's still a lot up for grabs. Warrington, despite their defeat to Huddersfield, are still mathematically in the chase for the playoffs. I think the chances are slim to none for Warrington. I think the chase for the sixth place is strictly between Hull and Wakefield. And as I said to you on
Yeah,
a message yesterday, I think it's going to come down to what teams what games the other side loses as opposed to what games your side wins. Because
Well, I mean,
Hull have much tougher games than Wakefield have got
I,
coming up.
I think the interesting thing between Hull and Wakefield, given recent events, is that both teams have got to play Rovers yet.
Yeah.
I expect Hull to knock off Warrington and Catalan at home. And if we knock off Rovers as well, then, either Rovers or Leeds, then I think that would probably be enough. But like I say, it's being one of those sorts of seasons, isn't it? You're never really sure
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Who's going to knock off who. But I just, I thought back over the weekend and I looked at it and I just thought, if going off what's happened in the last few weeks, if it is between Hull and Wakefield, I think right now you're favouring Hull.
Yeah. Hull are playing better even if they're not getting the results. Yeah.
Yeah, given current form, because I looked at, looking at Wakey, they had a week off last week. You'd have thought it had been manna from heaven for them. A 3 week off, and they'd get some bodies back, they'd have a bit of a rest, and they'd be ready to go. And I mean, their social media platforms have said, "Oh, what a strong side we've been able to pick against Wigan," and it was a strong Wakefield side. And earlier in the season, you would have expected them to be a whole lot more competitive than they were.
Yeah.
And I've just looked back at it, and their last 2 games, I mean, considering this is a Wakefield team that earlier in the season, they were always really competitive. And in a lot of cases, they were scoring a lot of tries and they were, putting some real big scores on teams and they were defending really well and they were getting some really good wins. And then in their last 2 games, get this, in their last 2 games, they've conceded 78 points and they've scored 6. That ain't playoff form.
No.
That's about as far off playoff form as it's possible to get, I would suggest.
I think Wakefield's problem throughout the whole season has been consistency, though, because they've been able to build up maybe 2 wins on the trot, and then they'll fall off and they'll lose 1 or 2, and then they'll get back on the horse.
If you look at, both Hull and Wakefield have had their problems. Hull have lost twice to Huddersfield. They've lost at home to Castleford. But if you're looking at, it's between those 2 teams for 6th place. Look at the results from their games against each other. And Hull have won them both. And, and the second one was obviously, it was that first home win in nearly a year. I was at Wakefield earlier in the season and it was such a fantastic vibe. It was great what they were doing in the ground, and you put those players in that situation and it was all built for Wakey to come up and really go at Hull. And Hull managed to come from behind and beat them. I just thought, you know what? That's a really big deal to be able to go there and win them. And I think it was an even bigger deal for Hull to beat them at Hull, because obviously everybody was making a big thing about Hull having won at home in nearly a year, and it needed to happen, and it happened that night, And again, Hull came from behind, and Hull proved that night that their best form of attack is their defence, because they absolutely tackled themselves to a standstill to keep Wakefield out, because Wakefield had plenty of possession, they had plenty of chances, and they only managed 1 try. And Hull, I think, never mind what Darrell Powell said about influencing the referee, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. Hull in the second half of that game really did a job on Wakey.
Mm.
And if you're going to look at the playoffs and it's between Hull and Wakey, if you're looking at who probably deserves it more and who looks the better at the moment, I think in both cases you're saying Hull, aren't you?
I think on the balance of form, I would say yes. Hull, as you say, Wakefield can concede in as many as they have and score in as little as they have. It isn't playoff form, and both teams have struggled for consistency. At this moment, you would say Hull, but the way things are going in the past few weeks, everything's so backwards and forwards
Precisely.
that that demographic could
Yeah,
change in a week
precisely. I mean,
because
I had a mate who messaged me yesterday, and he said, you know, I really hope Hull finish the job and get nailed down sixth place because he said, frankly, if you get Wakefield in the playoffs, he said they'll be a little more than cannon fodder at the
mm,
moment because of what St Helens and Wigan have just done to them. And let's face it, if they're doing it now,
mhm,
what are they going to what are the likes of them and Rovers and Lee going to do to them if they get hold of them in the playoffs?
yeah,
And so, but like you say, it could change from one week to the next. It could change from one half to the next in a match, can't it?
yeah.
We've seen that so many times this season.
I mean,
But
the difference between the two sides is so slim. There's only a point between them, and Wakefield have got the better points difference. I don't think it's as good as it once was, but that walkover they were rewarded really helped. So,
well, I mean, at the moment, their points difference is 38 points better than Hull
mhm,
at the moment, which that, uh, frankly, I could see Hull putting that away when they play at home against Catalan.
mm,
That I don't think that'd surprise anybody if Hull put that to bed.
no,
Um, Having said that, it depends what happens between now and then because first we've got Leeds this weekend, then we've got Rovers, and then we've got Warrington. Um, but a 38 points difference, um, that I wouldn't. If you're a Wakey fan, I don't think that you're really banking on that, are you, as
no.
making a difference? But to be
It's
fair,
not.
I mean, there's a 1 point difference between them in the points column anyway. So,
Yeah,
are Wakey going to draw one of their last few games? Or are Hull?
unlikely.
Not
It's
likely, is
unlikely.
it?
No,
I'm not saying it's impossible. Anything could happen this season, but are you really looking at points difference making a difference between Hull and Wakey? I think you're probably not, are you?
no. I think they're looking at it from an outside perspective. Even finishing seventh for either of the teams is a success based on what they had been. Because obviously Wakefield come up from the championship. Coming from the championship to
Yeah,
finish seventh is no bad deal. For Hull coming from
no.
last season when they finished second bottom and only won three all season, finishing seventh isn't
I,
again. It's
I,
no
I've
bad hand.
I've said it all along. I said Hull would finish somewhere between seventh to ninth. If we finish seventh, I'm very happy with that. You know, I suppose the fact that we're there now, we're in sixth and we're fighting for it. Yeah, I'd be disappointed to miss out on the playoffs, but at the same time, as I said, I haven't expected it all along anyway.
Mm.
So you if you don't expect it, you don't miss it, do you?
No, I mean, speaking of that, brings me nicely onto the race for the League Leaders Shield, which was brought. I still think it's Rovers to lose with the amount of games they've got this season, the points difference they've got, and they've been 4 points ahead. And I still think Rovers have got two more wins in them this season to secure the League Leaders Shield. But it's shown how again how everything can change in the space of a week. Because a week ago, Rovers had beaten Wigan; they were 6 points clear. They had a plus 200 points difference over Wigan, and now Rovers have gone to Leeds and they managed to get turned over there and concede a lot of points. Wigan have gone and scored a lot of points against Wakefield. The gap's back to four. Rovers have still got Saints, Hull, and Wakefield to play, which are going to be no easy rides in the park. I can assure you. The Saints game this week. I've said in the lead up to these last few weeks that I was as worried about Leeds and Saints as I was about Wigan the previous week, because I think
Yeah,
Leeds and Saints had been more informed than Wigan had been in the approach to that game.
yes, absolutely. I think, I mean, we both know the whole derby, anything can happen, can't it? And
Yeah.
anything regularly does happen. Um, I think St Helens is a big test for you, but I think
Mm,
it's a test for St Helens as well now
mm,
because they've been in great form and they're not so Wakey and Huddersfield with big scores in recent weeks, and then they've just about got over the top of us. Um, so I would say because of that, this week is a big test for St Helens. However Rovers are looking at it, St Helens are probably looking at it exactly the same way.
mm.
Um, Thinking, well, yeah, we struggled to get over the top of a very disrupted team, and now they're going up against what the team that are top of the league at the moment. Um, Having said that, they're also trying to chase Wigan for top two, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I would say they're hoping for us to beat Leeds, and they're hoping that they'll beat you.
Mm.
And I can't see them hoping that Wigan will lose to Catalan.
No.
I suppose stranger things have happened, haven't they?
I
Um,
suppose
but
looking at it from a Rovers perspective, I think how they've got to see it is we went to Leeds and we got turned over and we deserved to lose. And we've got to see that as a kick up the backside as opposed to a step backwards. Mikey Lewis, especially, has got to
yeah,
look at his performance in that game and think, I'm the man of steel. I'm like one of the players that this league is pushing as the big superstars. I've got to go out and
yeah,
prove myself that I deserve that spot because I didn't prove it last week.
yeah.
So I
And
expect
I
a
mean,
big game
how
from Mikey
much is he
Lewis this
thinking?
week.
How much is he thinking about that England shirt as well?
Well, yeah, that could also be a factor, but you can't afford to be looking ahead to the Ashes when there's so much of the season still left to play as well, I think, because there's still Rovers are still up
Yeah.
for two trophies. And even though I've said in jest to
Uh-huh.
friends of mine before, including yourself, that for Rovers trophies are like London buses, you wait for 40 years and three come along at once. I've said that in jest, but but I do think
Yeah.
that perhaps the winning the grand final might be one step too far for us at the moment. I'd love to be proven wrong on that, of
I'm,
course,
yeah.
but
Oh, yeah. We all think like that, don't we? I mean, to be
yeah.
fair, yeah. Um, I see where you're coming from, and I saying it's a step too far. Yes, I can understand why you'd think like that. Um, but I could also understand why you'd think, well, it's still a possibility,
Well, it is still a
because when
possibility, of
all's said and
course.
done, you
Mm,
have been the best team so far this year. Um,
mm,
you know, having said that, what history teaches us about the grand final is it's always won by the teams that have the more strength in depth through their youth systems, etc.
mm.
And at the moment, you wouldn't argue with either Wigan, St Helens, or Leeds winning it, would you?
No,
I,
I
I,
mean,
I, I mean,
I,
I've had some people even come to me and say they don't think Rovers will be in the grand final. And
mm,
there's been a few coming to me saying it's they fancy a Wigan Leeds grand final,
mm.
very possibly.
I think
Um,
if you'd have asked me about a month ago, I would have fancied a Rovers and Lee final. But at the moment, I think Lee have dropped off a little bit, and the plates are shifting ever so slightly. Um, and I wouldn't
well, I
really
mean,
like to
we
call
beat
it
Lee,
anymore.
didn't we? And
Yeah,
then they struggled to get over the top of Salford.
yeah.
Um, yeah, You know,
I think it's a similar case for them as it is for us. They've had such a good season that they're just starting to run out of steam towards the finish line, like a marathon runner. They're starting
maybe,
to hit the
yeah,
wall, maybe.
yes, yeah. What one would imagine, but it is what it is. I would genuinely say whoever finishes in the top six, every single one of them could win the grand final,
Mm,
could be in or win the grand final. Let's put it like that. If
yeah,
we finish sixth, I don't expect us to win the grand final, but I would say that yeah, we'd be a chance of being in it, given that one of the variables that you need to look at. If we finish sixth, we're permanently on the road in the playoffs,
mhm,
and at the moment, being on the road seems to quite suit Hull FC this season, doesn't it?
mm, yeah,
So not every time, but the vast majority of the time it does. But Rovers, yeah, they could win it. Certainly, Wigan could win it. Leeds could win it. St Helens could win it. Leigh could win it. If because I mean, they had that good few weeks, didn't they, when they beat both Wigan and Rovers, didn't they? And
yeah,
and they were finding a way to win games, weren't they?
yeah,
That's what a lot of the playoffs will come down to as well, is being able to find a way to win.
mhm,
And it is just it's basically it's flip a coin, isn't it, as to who
yeah.
could possibly win the grand final, and who could possibly be in it. Um, and how fantastic is it for the sport to be in that position?
Yeah, they've who everyone was expected to be in the grand final has shifted over the past sort of weeks and months, hasn't it? Because I think for
Well,
most of the season it was expected to be Rovers and Wigan again, and then Wigan had the drop
yeah,
off in form, and people were thinking, oh, well, maybe it could be Leeds or Saints against Rovers, and now Rovers are sort of hitting a bit of a dip in form, and people are questioning that.
well, I mean, I think with Rovers, it's been a bit of a thing where they had those two defeats against Leeds and Leigh. Then they had three easy wins, and then they did really well to go to Wigan and get the fourth win. And that massive that psychologically that's massive for Rovers.
Mm,
But the fact is, I said it to a lot of my mates.
mm,
Wigan that night played as badly against Rovers as they played against us. And when they
mm,
played that badly against us, we'd put them to bed by half time.
mm.
Wigan were still in with a chance of winning that game against Rovers at the end, by against us, but it was finished and done with by half time. And I actually saw Wigan fans leaving.
I think the difference between the two games is
um,
Wigan were a lot more switched on defensively against Rovers than they were against Hull.
yeah, yeah, they were. But it just to me, it told me a lot. And then I just thought, do you know what? That they'd had the three easy wins against Catalan, Castleford, and Salford, and it just none of it had convinced me.
Mm.
And Wigan, yeah, they did well to get over the top of Wigan, and you know, but again, it was two teams who scored one try each, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was goal kicking that was the difference. Um, and but Thursday night against Leeds, I thought was a massive shift because to me, on Thursday night at Leeds, Rovers players just didn't look interested. They looked like they couldn't be bothered, and
Um,
that really surprised me.
it just makes me wonder the Thursday night game against Leeds, how much the Wigan game took out of the team as a whole, how much it
Yeah,
took out of them physically and mentally
yeah,
too, because
yeah,
that was the sort of the point
yeah.
we
I get
needed to
that.
beat Wigan. We needed to beat Wigan, and
Yeah,
Leeds sort of seemed like an afterthought afterwards. And I think we underestimated that game because that we should have seen that as just as important as the Wigan game. But having them back to back meant
Yes,
that the pressure of both of them was too
maybe.
much.
And but now you've got St Helens, so it's not going to
Yeah,
get any easier, is it?
no, it's
Um,
not. But I
and
am
how much is it? How much is it bothering Rovers now? Now that Leeds have done a job like that on them, I don't know. But
I'm I'm not sure if it'll serve as the wake up call to really give them the kick up the backside. They need to get back to top form. But I was watching the Saints and Hull game. It made me realise that they're there for the taking because
yeah,
because
it
as
could
you
be.
said, Hull nearly took them down. So and Hull are
They
sixth
weren't
and one
far
top.
short, certainly.
Yeah, so it's not a it's and it's not as
Yeah,
if we don't have St
and
Helens
that's
number
why
at
I'm
recent
saying
times.
that's why I'm saying I'm not convinced about Rovers,
Mm,
and I probably won't be after this week as well, unless they get beat. If they
mm,
get beat by St Helens, that I think it's not absolutely catastrophic, but
no,
it certainly don't leave them in a good place if they
no,
lose
it doesn't.
at home to St Helens. Um, However, if they beat St Helens, I'm certainly not convinced because, like I said, I just saw how much St Helens struggled to get over us with
Mm.
so much adversity against us. Um, I don't know. I just think it's, what a season we're having, aren't we? It's just brilliant, absolutely
So
brilliant.
much is
And
on the flip of a coin at the moment, isn't it? That
yeah,
we don't really know
that's
what to
it.
expect from week to week.
That's it. And I mean, looking at our game against Leeds this week, people are going to say, "Oh, well, we've got no chance against Leeds when they've just played like that against Lee and against Rovers."
Mm,
Hello, we beat Lee as well,
mm,
and when Leeds just dismantled Rovers, yeah, they looked pretty damn good, but they weren't really challenged by Rovers, were they?
no,
I would dare say we're more likely to give them a much bigger challenge this week than what Rovers did last Thursday. But who
possibly, yeah.
knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, you know, I think Hull will be helped by the fact that Liam Watts and I believe Sam Essay Jr. are back this week.
Mm.
Um, so I'm really not sure what to expect this week. But I think, and I think the good thing for Hull fans as well is the fact that in previous years, that league game, um, the Wakey game a few weeks ago, this game this week, etc. In previous seasons, we've probably rolled over and got our belly tickled, because our finish to a season has been very poor for the last
Mm.
few years. I think what Friday night showed me is that's not the case this time. I think
Mm.
John Cartwright is all about timing it right. He knows what resources he's got available to him, and he'll be about using them in the right way at the right time. Um, and I would say Matty Pete is probably the same. Um, and however many other coaches that you want to mention will be all thinking the same way. But to me, Hull on Friday night, despite the defeat, it told me that Hull's end of season is probably not going to be much like it has been for the last few years. Let's put it like that.
No. Speaking of teams that we expected to be in the playoffs, I just want to touch briefly on the Huddersfield Warrington game because we can safely say that this year has been a bit of a disaster for Warrington, sat down in eighth as they are. Do you think the
Mm-hmm.
pressure is well and truly on Sam Burgess now
Well,
to
I mean, do
produce
you know what?
something out of the last few weeks?
I got sent a picture on social media, and it's absolutely right. It comes with a headline and everything. I saw Dan Walker, a Warrington hooker,
Mm-hmm.
was over at and going into, and he was either in the stand or he was about to get into the stand
Mm-hmm.
because obviously the Warrington faithful, quite rightly,
Mm.
have voiced their displeasure at that performance from Warrington. They've spent a lot of money getting to Huddersfield, etc. Blah blah blah. Um, and when you've got a situation like that, because let's not forget, a few years ago, you had Warrington fans going up into the stand to go and confront fans for what they were saying at
Mm.
their home ground. And if it's got to that stage again, I mean, you're getting a meltdown between the players and the supporters,
Mm.
and the players need to understand. Hang on a minute, those people pay your wages, and if they pay their money and they're not happy, they're going to tell you about it, and they've got every right to tell you about it. It doesn't going up into the stand and confronting fans don't do anybody any good.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I think when you get to that stage, yes, I think for Warrington it's gone now, hasn't it? I think
Mm.
probably they're still 5 points. We're in sixth place, and they're still 5 points behind us, and they've got a vastly worse points difference. So you'd say effectively we're 6 points ahead of them.
Mm.
Um, and we've got a home game against them, which we're gonna, we might really need to win. You
Mm.
know, um, so yeah, I think it's gone for Warrington. As for Sam Burgess, does he even want to be there? Apparently he's come out and he's absolutely laced into his players, which usually a coach would normally defend his players. When he's come out and he's absolutely laid into them,
Mm.
that to me makes his position possibly a bit untenable.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm wondering how much the thing with the Bears down under is affecting him personally.
Mm.
And I mean, because I mean, there's been so many other things with Sam Burgess, hasn't there? Like, they had the whole, situation about trying to get him to go to Las Vegas because he couldn't get a visa because of his past history, etc.
Mm.
Um, and I think, from Warrington, yeah, they got to Wembley, and a lot of people will still say that they should have won the Challenge Cup that day.
Mm.
Um, and that would have been a really good thing for Sam Burgess to sign off on.
Mm.
But it didn't happen, so that's by the board. But to be outside the playoffs as well, I, I just wonder how much the players are actually playing for him and
Mm.
how much they are playing for themselves.
I mean, you look at the amount of quality that's in Warrington's squad, like their first 13s. You've got your Matt Duftys, you've got George Williams, Max Sneed, Toby King, Ben Curry, players like this who are international level players.
Yep.
And something's missing, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
for
Something ain't
whatever
right, is it?
reason. I mean, look at the what happened with Matt Duffy and Toby King in previous weeks. They were dropped down to reserve grade for off the field
Yeah.
disciplinary measures. Something's happening there that we're not privy to, and
Yeah.
is that maybe falling out between the players and the coach?
I don't know.
We don't know, do
I
we?
honestly don't know. Um, Whether the players maybe think, oh, he's off anyway because they think he's going to the Bears down under. I don't know. It just seems a very strange situation at Warrington. Um, you know, to be fair, I think if they had won the Challenge Cup, that would have papered over some cracks for a while.
Mm.
But how he could have probably seen out this season on the back of that if they had won.
Mm.
Um, but then of course you'd get to the end of that, you'd have the Ashes series, and then you're back into pre-season training in November, and then it's a
Mm.
whole new start again, isn't it? And how long could it actually last? Because whatever is wrong there, it's quite entrenched, isn't it? So
Yeah.
you go off for a break in pre-season, and then you come back to start pre-season training, and that problem is still there, and it needs dealing with. And I don't know how they deal with it, but the easiest way, you've got two ways. Either you get rid of your entire squad, make wholesale changes,
Mm.
or you get rid of the coach, don't you?
Yeah. I think it's a deeply entrenched problem that's been there for a while as well, because they had Darryl Powell before they had Sam Baird, who was a very good
Yeah,
coach, who again just couldn't seem to make it happen at Warrington. And you
yeah.
know,
I mean, the common denominator here is Warrington.
yeah.
That their squad, they've got so many star players, um, and they've got some really good, top, young, talented players that have come through their ranks.
Mm.
So of course they're trying to break into winning the grand final because they're starting to produce their own youth rather than just buying it in like they've tried previously. Um, and it still ain't working yet. Um,
No.
how many more coaches do they have to go through?
Yeah. It's a you can buy a squad of star players, but it doesn't make them a team, does it? And that's the
Absolutely, it
problem
doesn't.
across sport.
Yeah,
To be a winning team, you need a team. You don't need a squad of individuals.
yes,
You need a team that gels together. And I think that's where Rovers have,
yeah.
have got the balance right in the last few years, because they've brought in players with big names, but they've fitted the model of a team that they
Well, I mean,
want.
Rovers, they've obviously got Mikey Lewis, haven't they? Who's come
Mm.
through their ranks, who's rather good. You've got some other local lads, which I know you got from us, Dean Hadley, Jez Litton,
Mm.
Jack Brown, but they are, at the end of the day, local lads who are representing one of the teams from their hometown.
Mm.
It's always going to make that bit of a difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, whole obviously we've got our own homegrown players as well,
Yeah.
you know. And then you look at the likes of Wigan and St Helens and Leeds, who have always done it. So again, you're looking at the same root cause, aren't you?
Mm.
But no team is perfect at it. Wigan are probably the nearest to being perfect at it, but they're not absolutely perfect. I interviewed Matty Pete last year, and he said
Mm.
one of the things that they do, that they pride themselves on, is their young talents when they come through. When they're in the reserves or they're in the academy, they're still treated like the first team.
Mm.
They are treated exactly the same. They are given, they are told, they have exactly the same amount of responsibility to wear that cherry and white shirt as all their superstars in the first team do. And I thought, do you know what? What a great way to go about it. And I
Mm.
think, clubs can really learn from that. But like I say, Wigan are still not perfect at it. They're the best at it in this country at the moment.
Yeah.
And they will be, and they have been for a long time, you know. Um, and I don't know how they're helped by the fact that Matty Pete, he used to be their youth team coach. He used to coach their academy and their reserves, and now he's coaching at first team level. Um, are they helped by that? Possibly. You know, is that the way Hull Rovers need to go about it? Do people like Gareth Ellis, um, Danny Ward, etc., need to be, when Willie Peters and John Cartwright are no longer in charge, do they need to promote from within? I mean, Hull have Francis Cummins coaching the reserves,
Mhm.
etc. Rovers will have whoever is coaching their reserves and
I believe it's Jason Netherton that coaches Rovers reserves, but
right.
I'm not sure.
Well, would Jason Netherton be in the running when Willie Peters' option goes back home to Australia? Would Jason Netherton be the right person to replace him because he knows the conversations that he's having with Willie Peters about young players going into the Rovers first team? I mean, look at Noah Booth,
Hmm.
people like that. You know, would that help Rovers? I don't know, but it's maybe something else to look at.
For some people, the step up from assistant to head coach is too far for them, isn't it? And their level
Yeah, I
is
mean, look at
assistant
Andy
coach or
Last.
reserve coach. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've
Yes,
got Danny Ward as one of our assistants, and he's been a Super League coach. But is it
yeah.
maybe that he's found his level at being an assistant? We don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he was a very good first team coach, and I think he could be again. But you know, he's wanted to join Rovers on that journey, and good luck to him, and good for him. Um, but it is what it is. Um, Sooner or later, I would suggest that a job will come along and he'll go.
Yeah,
A first team. I mean, John Cartwright. He was a head coach at Gold Coast Titans, but he was an assistant. Uh, Brisbane Broncos, etc. He was assistant for New South Wales State of Origin team. But he went for the whole job because he said he wanted another go at being a head coach.
well,
And
you've just
right
got
now
to
he's
look
doing
at
quite a good job. But
in the playoff positions in NRL, there is a former Hull KR assistant coach who's in charge of New Zealand Warriors in the form of Andrew Webster, who was
there
an
we go.
assistant coach at Rovers, and he's gone and made a career for himself over there as a head coach, and he's doing well at the moment. So
Yeah.
you never know
And I
what's
mean,
going to happen.
we
Yeah.
keep hearing about Willie Peters being connected with this, that, and the other Australian NRL team, don't we?
Mm.
That's always going to happen because that's where he's from.
Yeah.
I understand that the Newcastle Knights coach has been somewhat under pressure, and people are saying, "Oh, they'd want Willie Peters to go back there and take over as head coach because, of course, he was the assistant there, wasn't
Yeah.
he?" But who knows? You know, Again, that's one for in the future, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's coming, but I don't think it's coming in the immediate future. I think, as you say, he's going to be connected with every job going because he's currently being very successful. But I
Yeah,
think as long as he's still got things outstanding to win at Rovers, then the job won't be done for him.
yeah, precisely. But who knows? Who knows what
Yeah.
comes next? But
So
I mean, mhm.
go, go ahead. What was you going to say?
Oh no, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Just before we finish, I want to touch on the latest on the Salford situation. I don't know whether you've been keeping abreast of the 1873's posts on Facebook, but they've done a
Some
very
of them, but I am rather busy at the moment.
yeah, they've done a rather interesting deep dive post on one of the owners whose name I can't pronounce. I think it's Serge some. He's the one that is connected with Kristen Inu. He's a friend of Kristen Inu, who's one of the assistant coaches, and they did a very
Right.
interesting deep dive post on him and how many businesses he's incorporated and dissolved within the space of 12 months, and he's been involved in court cases to do with unpaid bills and unpaid tax bills and this, that, and the other. And
So can
it
I
makes
ask
a very
one
interesting.
thing? Can I
Yeah.
ask one thing then? How did this bloke get to be in charge of Salford Red Devils then? Was he not checked out by the RFL
Well, there we
fit and
go.
proper persons check?
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Yes, but
Okay.
yeah, I think it was a case of the RFL just wanted someone to buy Salford, didn't they? And that was the end of that. Someone came along and said we
Pretty
want to buy
much.
him, and they waved
Yeah.
him through. But if you
Yeah.
just, I mean, the images, there's about four pages of things like he'd been sued for unpaid wages and sued for tax bills, and he's incorporated X amount of companies and then dissolved them, and because he's not submitted their accounts to Companies House and things like that. And it's
Oh, lovely.
why is why is this sort of person being waved through as a fit and proper owner of a rugby league club? It's
You tell
makes
me.
you wonder, doesn't it?
I will never understand it.
No.
Never. Never in a million years will I understand that. I mean, it's been a disaster, hasn't it?
Mm,
And it continues to be a disaster, and that's all it's ever going to be. It'll continue to be a disaster. They're going to be down at least in the championship next season. I wouldn't even be surprised if they didn't bust them down to League One,
mm.
considering the state of the situation there.
If there is a League One
Um,
next season, that is.
well, there will be, because mind you, no,
So they're
no, because
restructuring the
yeah,
bottom leagues, aren't they? So
yeah, they
who
were
who
going to
knows
put
what's going to with
the
anyone
League
go?
One and the Championship together, weren't they?
Yeah,
Potentially. So
but it's due to be another big week for Salford because the payroll will be due this week. The bridging loan is supposed to be coming in
there we
today.
go again.
So here
We're
we
at
go
that
again.
stage of the month again, are we?
Yeah, because
Oh, what blacks!
because according to the 1873, what they were told was that the bridging loan was due to get to the club today, as in Monday the 26th, 25th. So yeah, we shall see what happens there.
Hey, who needs Only Fools and Horses for a sitcom when you
I
can
mean,
just have Salford?
I mean,
Deary me.
if you wouldn't laugh, you'd cry, wouldn't you, at all the
Well, that's it.
calamities that
Yeah.
have
I
become
mean,
them?
Paul Rowley the other week when they came to all, he looked absolutely broken, and
Yeah, I know. Poor
he
bloke.
just, I wanted to ask him questions, and
Mm,
I thought, no, I'm not going to because it wouldn't be fair on him. He didn't want to be there, and I mean, he carried himself with such grace.
mm,
He said, "Oh, but, because they walked in, and the Salford media manager said, does anybody want to ask Rhodes any questions, or can he just get off?" Because you could
mm,
see he didn't want to be there either.
yeah.
And, you know, somebody piped up, oh, yeah, I'll ask him some questions. And then Rolls said, oh, is there anybody else who wants to ask me questions? I'll be governed by you guys if because there was a well-known rugby league journalist called Dave Craven had been up in the press box, and we'd expected him in the media suite afterwards, but he wasn't there. And we thought, oh, we're waiting on him coming down, because is he going to want to ask questions? And Rolls said, I can wait, if necessary, and he really tried his best. And I just thought, why didn't you just take the job when we
Mm.
offered you it? Um,
Oh, the Leeds job when he was
I,
offered that,
yeah,
supposedly.
precisely. Yeah, I don't know. He was so classy,
Mm,
and he he deserved so much better, and so did the players. And I mean, you saw how our players and their players came together,
yeah.
and our players went over and applauded their fans as well. And Rose, he actually said that everybody had been great with them wherever they'd gone, and he said Hull have just upped it another level with the way
Mm,
that we dealt with them. And that I hope that they got the same at Lee the other night. I don't know, but you would think Rose he'd still be very popular there, won't he, for the job he did
mm.
there. Um, you would hope that he'd get a similar sort of reception, but
Yeah,
who
I,
knows?
I, I think what makes it all the more sad was this was supposed to be his swan song year as Salford's coach because he was supposed to go
Yeah,
upstairs, wasn't he, next season? And
yeah,
Kurt Haggerty was supposed to take over.
yeah,
And
because they said when we offered him the job for us, he was on his way to sign the contract and take over, and Kurt Haggerty was going to take over as their first team coach at that point. And then he told the driver to turn around because he'd changed his mind and he didn't think Kurt Haggerty was quite ready enough to be a head coach.
mm,
And he went back to Salford and he stuck with them, and then they said, well, we'll move you upstairs, Kurt Haggerty can have the job in a year's time and you can be director of rugby. And he went for that.
mm,
But now what?
yeah,
Can they even offer him that?
problem. I mean, they're likely to end up in the champion, whatever the championship and League One ends up being. They're going to be down there, and they're likely
Yeah,
going to have to go part time as a
yeah,
consequence of that. Are they going to be able to afford a director of rugby? I doubt it.
I doubt it. I doubt
How
it.
how how many championship clubs have one? I mean, I
I
think
don't know.
you'd
I don't
probably look
honestly
at
know.
Bradford, Toulouse, and York, and that'd probably be about
I
it.
would think Oldham probably will have,
Maybe
won't
Oldham
they?
as well, yeah. But
Maybe
I think
London
it's
Broncos.
I think it's Paul Rowley that sort of my heart goes out to Paul Rowley because I really
Yeah.
admire him admire him as a coach, and
Do you know what? Do you know what I would say? I would give Paul Rowley Coach of the Year at the Super League Awards at the end of the season.
I'd go
I
for that.
honestly would,
Yeah,
because I think he he deserves it more than anybody for the way he's carried himself and the way he comes across. I mean, I've chatted to him a few times, and he's just such a nice, likable bloke. You can't fail to get on with him. He's a really nice bloke, and I just feel for him. I really feel for him.
I think the thing about Paul Rowley is that I don't think he'd want to accept it because I don't think he would want a prize that he's getting because people feel sorry for him
Well, no,
or
I
something
think
like
he
that.
would deserve. I think he would deserve it because for the resources that he's got, or more to the point, hasn't got, he's still managing to make that team competitive at times. I mean, look at Friday night; it was only 12-6 at half time to Leigh.
Mm,
They didn't get away from them until well into the second half. When you beat them the other week, 74-12, at one point, for I would say for the second quarter of that game, Salford were the better team. They,
mm,
they were absolutely taking it to you, and they took it to us as well. And they've competed in games, and they've actually managed to win games. That nobody would have expected them to win any games, would they? Given the
no.
situation, So I would say give him it because he's shown the prerequisite excellent coaching skills to be able to win it. Not because we feel sorry for him, but because look at, yeah, you'll say give it to Willie Peters for winning the Challenge Cup, give it to whichever coach wins the grand final, whatever.
Mm,
Even if Willie Peters wins the treble,
mm.
um, you'd say give it to him for that. But could you really rule Paul Rowley out? Because if he had the resources that Willie Peters has got, wouldn't he be able to do the same?
Probably, yeah.
There you go.
I mean,
So would you,
it's a sad state
you
of affairs, isn't it?
because
And
because I mean last season, who was one of the runners up for Coach of the Year? Can you remember?
Mike Eccles, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
who finished bottom with London.
yeah,
He was one of the runners up for Coach of the Year. So,
yeah.
certainly, let's have him nominated. Let's have him up there on the shortlist, at
Mm,
least, just because of the way that he's handled himself.
yeah. I mean, it's going to be another tough week, I'd imagine, another news-filled week for Salford fans, and we'll be keeping
Yeah,
abreast of all the news and posting it on the pages and what have you. And We hope the
Of course we will.
1873's campaigning continues to go from strength to strength, and that we'll be seeing more of them in the future.
One update I can give you, sort of from the press box, I have contacted uh, RFL Commercial and I've
Mhm.
asked when I need to be sending my votes in for the Rugby League Writers and Broadcasters Association Player of the Year. Um, if you've got, let's throw this open on the page. Let's ask people who at your club deserves to win Rugby League Writers and Players Association, Rugby League Writers and Broadcasters Association Player of the Year.
Mhm.
Nominate it to me who you think I should vote for. I know who I
Mhm.
think I should vote for, but let's get people messaging the Gerrim Onside Rugby
Mhm.
League fan site and our social media platforms telling me I think you should vote for this player. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be the team that you support. It can be at any other team, at any team that any player who you think deserves to be the Rugby League Writers and Broadcasters Association Player of the Year. The current incumbent is, of course, a certain Mr. Mikey Lewis. But the year
Mhm.
before him, it was Lachlan Lamb. So I'm hoping that we'll get a few different sorts of players other than just halfbacks who grab all the headlines because they're
Yeah.
gobby and they're super talented. Get people to vote, to send in their votes to me or to us at Gerrim Onside on our Facebook page, etc., and who they think I should vote for as the Rugby League Writers Player of the Year.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I tell you who my
And of course, like and subscribe our YouTube channel and send it in on there as well, of course,
yeah,
if you want to.
send it in the comments down below. Of course, and we'll read all of those. I'll tell you right now who my picks would be from Rovers. Mine would be Jack Broadbent is my player of the year for Rovers. I think you and a sort of sentimental pick for Dean Hadley as well because I think he's always one of Rovers' best players all season, but it never quite gets the plaudits he deserves. So
I could tell you a funny little story about Dean Hadley when he made his Rovers debut.
yeah,
Because obviously Rovers sing that when the red robin comes bob 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 and you know what
yeah,
us Hull fans put on the end of that.
yeah.
We
Of course
say
you
end
do.
of it.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Dean Hadley, he made his debut for you against Castleford in a golden point win when Danny Maguire kicked the winning drop goal in golden points.
Hmm.
And he and Jeslett, they went into the Rovers changing room afterwards and they were singing the song with them. And they sang when the red robin comes bob bob bobbing along. And at the end of it, Dean Hadley put that Hull FC finish on the end of it as well. Apparently, made quite a few of the team get quite a good giggle at that. I don't think some of them realised exactly what the whole fans say at the end of it. I'm not going to say it,
Yeah,
because it's a little bit naughty, isn't it? It's a bit
it
rude,
is.
but yeah. Apparently he did that. So there you go. There's a nice little story about Dean Hadley on his Rovers debut.
Well, that's a nice note to end it on. Before we do go, I'm just going to run us through the fixtures like I always do. So, starting with the Betfred Men's
And of
Super
course, you're
League.
going to give us a view of Jackson as
Of
well.
course, yes. Before I give you the fixtures, then I'll let Jackson say hello to the viewers. If you can, if you don't want to subscribe for our ugly mugs, then subscribe for Jackson's, because
Yeah.
he's the looker of the podcast. There he is.
Hey,
There's Jackson.
Jackson!
There he is.
Hey!
He'll be at Craven Park with me this Friday night when Rovers take on St Helens. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. He's hoping there's not many fireworks that evening, but we shall see. going on, going on to the fixtures, we've got Thursday evening Lee versus Castleford. On Friday, there's two games: Hull KR versus St Helens and Warrington versus Salford. Saturday, we've got three games. There's no game on Sunday, so we've got Hull FC versus Leeds Rhinos, Wakefield Trinity versus Huddersfield Giants, and Catalan Dragons versus Wigan Warriors. Down under in the NRL, Around 25 over there. Things are starting to heat up down under as well. The Canterbury Bulldogs take on the Penrith Panthers on Thursday morning. That's in the UK. Friday morning, New Zealand Warriors take on the Parramatta Eels. Also on Friday morning, Melbourne Storm versus Sydney Roosters. On Saturday, Canberra Raiders versus the West Tigers. St George Illawarra versus Manly Sea Eagles. And North Queensland Cowboys versus Brisbane Broncos. And on the Sunday, Cronulla Sharks versus Newcastle Knights and Dolphins versus the Gold Coast Titans. In the championship, the men's championship, that is, Saturday sees Batley versus London and Bradford versus Toulouse as the fight for top spot in the championship hots up there. On Sunday, Oldham versus Doncaster. Oldham, of course, chasing the top four after having a wonderful first season in the championship. Barrow take on Halifax, Sheffield take on Featherstone, and Widnes take on Hunslet. Finally, in League, well, I'll get onto the women's team, the women's games as well. But League One on Sunday, North Wales Crusaders versus Keighley Cougars, Dewsbury Rams versus Midlands Hurricanes, Goole Vikings versus Newcastle Thunder, and Workington Town versus Rochdale. The Women's Super League, Lee Leopards take on Huddersfield on Saturday afternoon at 12 o'clock, and St Helens take on the York Valkyrie. Also on Saturday, Barrow Raiders versus Wigan Warriors and Warrington Wolves versus Leeds Rhinos. Women's NRL, Saturday, Canberra versus West Tigers, St George Illawarra Dragons versus New Zealand Warriors, and North Queensland Cowboys versus Sydney Roosters. And Sunday, Cronulla Sharks versus Newcastle Knights, Brisbane Broncos versus Canterbury Bulldogs, and Gold Coast Titans versus Parramatta Eels. So that's all the rugby league that's on tap for us this weekend. The last weekend in August, can you believe? We're heading into September, and truly
Oh my word!
truly the curtain's about to come down on the season now. Things are hotting up, and we
Oh,
should be
don't
here
say that.
to.
We've still got an Ashes series beyond that.
Yeah, we've still got
And
an
then,
Ashes
then
series to look forward
early
to.
November, my new season will start in early November when I get invited down to media gathering at Hull FC pre-season training, and probably very early on.
Yeah,
Certainly I would say in the first couple of weeks.
yeah, and then the work will begin all over again for 2026. So,
Indeed.
thank you for tuning in today. Don't
Thank you
forget to
very
like
much,
and
everyone.
subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.